Good morning. I'm Bill Reeder. I'm at the Confucius Institute US Center in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the first in a series of cultural conversations about culture and transnational exchange programs. Today we have two experts who will share their journeys and give us insights about this dynamic and important process. First, we have Leonie Hodkevitch, who hails from Vienna, Austria, and Jennifer Schrock, who is from DC. And I would like for both of you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your programs, your professional work, and we'll start with the furthest traveler first. Leonie.
Yeah, hello to everybody. So I'm Leonie Hodkevitch. I am Vienna based, and I have a threefold occupation or profession. I'm an author, a novelist, I'm a cultural producer. I do, on the one hand, European projects, on the other hand, projects that become more and more about inclusion as times change. And I teach cultural management in most European universities, now in some US university as well. And I had the privilege to install the first Austrian cultural management program at the University of Vienna, which happens to be the oldest university of Europe. It's 650 years old, but it didn't have an arts administration program, and now it's got it.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Jennifer Schrock, what's your journey?
Sure. So I'm based here in DC by way of Canada, actually. And right now I'm the Director of Cultural Exchange Programs at the International Arts and Artists, which is a nonprofit based up in DuPont Circle. And what we do there is provide cultural exchange opportunities for students and professionals in the arts, culture, and design fields. So these are individuals who are coming to the U.S. to train or intern temporarily, or to do scholarly work at a museum or cultural institution here. So we facilitate those exchanges, and we engage with our alumni in the years following their programs as well. So we're working on building a network of exchange alumni to really tap into in the years to come.
Well, I'm at George Mason University and a professor in the Arts Management program, and we see increasingly our students coming from all over the world. And we also see the yearning on the part of almost all of our students to have some global experience in their professional lives. What is cultural exchange, broadly speaking, and how is it formed in terms of an academic program?
In Europe, as we have so many countries that are so different, when we say cultural exchange, our first association would be between different cultures. So a dialogue between a Swedish culture and Portuguese culture, which is adventurous enough. Yeah. The second meaning of culture in terms of arts and culture is that actually the arts and culture have become maybe the most important vehicle, also in terms of the European Union, for the cultural, intercultural exchange. So it is by means of theater or visual art or music or literature, there are special literature translations programs, that actually people are supposed to exchange in a cultural way. We have very little idea of transatlantic, everything that happens on the other side of Pacific, of Atlantic. People are extremely fascinated to know more about life, for example, in America. And my students on my program, I had a webinar with the NYU, and they were like hypnotized and nervous. What will it be like now? So this extremely, the little details that make it exciting. If you want to do how the other person feels and thinks. And I think that the arts as a vehicle, a tool to make you more curious and to make you understand how the other nations, cultures, communities function. This is what is exciting about it right now.
One of our professors at George Mason has this phrase. He said, "Theories divide, stories unite."
Yeah.
And do you find that the storytelling and the exchange of experience is at the heart of a good cultural exchange program, or is it more geopolitical,
Yeah.
Oriented around economics and such, or is it
No, not at all. We're in Vienna, come on. It's the city of Sigmund Freud, and so it's more about insights and reflection. This program is very practical. It's very hands-on. So it is very compact, as it's the first one. Maybe it's going to be a master, we're going to see about that. It's international, it's in English. We have really people teaching from all over the world. This was the first edition now, yeah. We have students even from New Caledonia and so very mixed. And it's hands-on, so you are getting trained how to perform project management, international relationships. We have diplomats that come and teach. And every now and then you have like sprinkles of some theoretical input in order to inspire you and channelize your mind into unexpected directions. But it's more hands-on. I wouldn't call it academic.
Yeah. Jennifer, from your lens and from the work you do on a daily basis, describe a little bit what artists are expecting and what happens to them when they bring a show to the United States or vice versa.
Sure. I think cultural exchange, there's sort of two elements to it. There's sort of the bigger, sharing values and sharing experiences and sharing artistic work. But then there is also a lot of sort of tangible skills and takeaways that the artists can take back to their home countries after. So I see it really as an opportunity for them to come to the U.S. to tap into the resources that we have here, whether it's institutions or individuals or possible collaborators. But it's also sort of broadening their horizons and learning more about the values that we hold here in the U.S., what it's like to be a cultural manager or an arts manager, and so that they can take that knowledge back. And they're also building those networks and forming those relationships that benefits them not only now but down the line. You keep that professional network and you keep that growing through the years, so that in 5, 10, 20 years you never know who could be a potential partner or collaborator or funder for a project that we can be doing.
Talk to me a little bit about funding practices and funding policies.
Sure.
I suspect there's quite a difference between Europe and the United States. What's the funding expectations for a global exchange program at International Arts and Artists?
Sure. So I think here in the U.S. there's sort of public and private funding for exchanges. Right now the big talk in D.C. is the proposed cuts to the State Department's exchange programs, and they've announced a 28% cut with unspecified cuts to the exchange programs themselves. So we don't know exactly where these cuts will come from, but they're certainly going to be impacting our work in the years to come. I think there's a lot of space for public funding, but I think there's also a growing space for privately funded exchange programs. At International Arts and Artists, we work with the J1 Exchange Visitor Program, which is all funded entirely by the individual or by the organization they're coming here to work with. So I think those sorts of programs will be able to persist despite maybe fluctuations in funding. But I think the lack of government funding or potential cuts to government funding could mean that the exchange programs aren't as accessible to people from diverse ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds. So.
And how is it in Europe?
Well, when we speak of cultural funding, it has been, in Europe, it has been very a habit that the government funds it. In the last, I would say, since 2000, since the millennium, this changed rapidly, and it became more like, I assume it's in America and Canada, that you have more and more private sponsoring for culture and less governmental funding. When it comes to education, we still feel this has to be governmental. So it would be, I think, impossible to have an enterprise fund a university or something like this. It's like the last obstacle. And the European Union does have funding programs, like for example Erasmus, that are or lifelong learning (LLL), that are dedicated to people moving around, learning, continuing education, and leaving their comfort zone where they were born or raised, in order to go elsewhere to at least stay there and learn for a year. Because we have the feeling, also what you said about the network, as soon as you know one person in Peru, you have a completely different access to the Peruvian cultural scene than if you look up a cultural center Lima or Peru. Yeah, so this is like magic. It opens a door. It's like a shell that opens. And what we are doing right now here is also part of this, because it makes a huge difference whether we write each other a mail or sit and look at each other. And this is what is part of this fundings of the European Union. Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons that we were so delighted to be able to have this interview is that we stand in front of, or sit in front of the Confucius Institute logo, and the whole mission of the Confucius Institute is people-to-people exchange, and our desire is to increase the number of people who understand and have an experience of modern China, culturally and linguistically, of course.
Yeah.
And just to add to the conversation, recent policy development around arts and culture in China stresses 5 main themes. One is raw creativity and encouraging new things. The second one is cultural heritage. Then we have the cultural industries, which is increasingly pressing in on arts management. You know, how are jobs changing and where are they blending in terms of policy, in terms of for-profit, in terms of non-profit. And then we have arts in the community, which is a very rapidly growing phenomenon in China. And then the final one is global cultural exchange. And so, you know, I think it will be really exciting to connect with your work and to more fully connect with yours as we move. But the question then becomes, what should an education for tomorrow's managers contain? How do we shape that? What's the curricular advantage that we might afford people who want to have this experience? What's your sense?
Well, I think when you say tomorrow's managers, I think it's actually already today's.
Yeah, well, that's true. I agree.
Today's managers have to be made fit for this global situation. So one of our modules, we have 4 modules of our program, and the second one is called Global Conversation. And the word global is not very easy always in Europe, you know, globalization and G8 and all this. And what I think is that people have to be made understand how things function elsewhere. Because if you think in the other direction, conflicts, not artistic, but global conflicts also come from the fact that we don't know how the others think, or we're afraid of them. So I think that more than ever, arts and cultural management, and I see it in my students, most of them are professionals, so they already work in the field. It's not, they're not undergraduates, so most of them already have been working in the field, and like it's a postgraduate program. And they say, yeah, I feel shy to contact this and this place, and I don't know how it works. But I see that they feel a social responsibility more than I know it like 10 or 15 years ago, where it was more l'art pour l'art, and now it's like a social responsibility to participate in social changes in a positive way. And this is what we have to make them fit. So actually also with non-cultural qualifications.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jennifer? I mean, as someone in the early stages of a professional career, what was your background in training, and what do you feel like you still need to experience?
That's a great question. I think certainly my university, and what I would encourage other universities to do, is tell their students to travel or study abroad or work abroad at some point during their undergraduate or graduate program. I was lucky enough to study abroad in Korea and intern abroad in South Africa. And you really learn a lot about yourself and those around you when you're forced to sort of take yourself out of your comfort zone and be somewhere where you're not as comfortable. You know, I think culture shock can be a good thing. I think you really do learn a lot about yourself. But then also sort of on the skills side of things, I think working abroad, you get those skills that you need to thrive in a really competitive job market now. You know, the world is becoming a much smaller place, and it's very competitive for young people to get a job. So I think having that extra little bit that you get by studying or working abroad really can help. I think one thing I'd encourage students, and that I'm still working on, is the second and third language.
Yeah.
I think in Europe you you guys don't, like 4 languages by the time you're 5.
Yeah, but our English is not that good.
Oh, that's not
Very,
true.
very good. So, I think here in the U.S., students sometimes have a second language, but I think encouraging them to start earlier on learning and keeping those language skills up as they go on throughout their careers.
Well, you read my mind, because that was exactly the next thing I wanted to talk about, was the role of language, both as an expression of culture, but then as a shared medium.
Yeah.
It is, I grew up on a farm in Kansas, and I heard my first foreign language when I was in college.
Yeah.
And so I became fluent in German later in my life, and I really treasure that in my own experience. And it disappoints me when I see other Americans shy away from languages, which isn't the case in Europe. Although in China there are growing numbers. Well, there are more people who speak English in China than speak English in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But how does language play into all of this? You say your program is in English.
Yeah, it is in English. It is in English. Well, for me, languages are extremely important. I grew up in a multi-linguistic environment with like 4 languages at home, and then I started collecting them, including languages that I don't use every day. Since yesterday, I have been attracted to learning Chinese. So we'll see what happens next. I know it's difficult, but when you have a professional reason, you kind of slip into it more easier. And this is what also is, if people will not sit at home and start learning the language, but if they have a professional reason, if they know they're going to be staying in another country for a month or a year, then they'll learn it. And I think that the language is absolutely necessary. And you don't have to master it. You don't have to speak it fluently and be able to write an encyclopedia in the language. It would be good to be able to be polite to people, but I'm speaking of a knowledge more than just ordering a drink.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
To be able to hear, because the language provides us access into the thinking of the other people, into their philosophic background.
Do you have a different personality in each of your languages?
I think so. I mean, it's not like complete, schizophrenia or something, but I do have, I think, a different means of,
I'm funnier in German.
How funny I'm in German.
I'm funnier. When
You're
I speak
funnier.
German, I'm funnier
Really?
than in English, yeah.
That surprises me, but
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how I think language interplays with your own mind and your own development as an individual. What about you?
Sure. So I definitely think that we should encourage students to pick up languages younger in life.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to grow up in Canada, where we started learning French in 1st grade. But sort of my counterparts here in the US didn't have that opportunity.
Right.
I also think we should look at diversifying the languages we're teaching or offering. I think by the time students are getting to the university level, they have access to take Mandarin or Russian or Arabic or another language. But I think if we could get that started a little bit earlier, it would be really helpful in opening up some of those doors that students can start thinking already, like, oh, what about this area of the world? What about this sort of field for me to go in? And I think we have seen that learning a second, third language really does lead to better grades and better performance in other areas of academic endeavors. So I think tapping into that language could be really helpful down the line for students' well-being.
Absolutely.
and it's easier when you're a kid. I mean, when you're a kid, it's much easier to learn it than afterwards, because you learn it like you learn your mother tongue, not with grammar. And I have been interested in children with that are bilingual. They learn that an object, for example, a table, is not called a table, so the abstract thinking is being promoted. They learn that there are different words for table, and I think that this has also an impact on some kind of viewpoint or so. Yeah,
I agree.
But because you said English, I was concerned that the people might be from Austria, most of the people in my course, and that somehow we would go to speak German in the course. This was part of the selection process. People who did not speak German were also very welcome in this. And the people, for example, in Austria, feel shy about their level of English.
Interesting.
Yeah, because English is taught in school. It is considered a very simple language, But I know that it's very difficult once you get above a certain level. Yeah. All these words, what you can say in English, in professional spheres, English is the best. All these nuances that you can say.
How do you see Chinese growing as a language in Europe? Has it caught on the way it's catching on here?
I don't know exactly how it's catching on here, but in Europe
It's catching on
definitely very many people have the wish to know Chinese. I don't know how this will change. Of course, people are comfortable, and it would. If you think that people in China speak English anyway, then the motivation to learn Chinese in economic circles might be less, because the negotiation language is Chinese. But definitely in the cultural sphere, it's growing very much.
Yeah. What about, have you encountered more and more of it, or is it still in its early stages?
I think in America it's still in its early stages. We're certainly seeing some students who just have a fascination with the country and sort of take that up on their own. But I also think for some who maybe focused on some of the Romance languages, the idea of learning Mandarin is a little daunting. So I think having sort of the resources for them if they choose to take up that language is really helpful. So I think having the Confucius Institutes across the U.S. is very great and very promising for the next few years in terms of language.
Sure. So as you look at the state of play of global exchange, artistic exchange, what's missing? Besides money.
It always comes back to funding.
Well, because money's an interesting thing. It follows meaning.
Yeah.
Peter Drucker said money is actually made up and it responds to demand. And that if you want more of it, you have to ask for more of it.
Yeah.
Whereas other things like time, doesn't matter, you can ask for more, but you can't have any more. So the money is absolutely a medium that we struggle with, but putting that as sort of a given, I view it as a stage in the creative process.
Yeah.
Besides money, what do you think?
But you see, the money that's missing, I don't mean now the money that arts and culture need. I mean the money that our audiences need. The money of the audiences is missing. Because when you have to fight for your children's daily bread, you don't go to a theater. So this is what's missing actually, some kind of, and also some peace of mind. Yeah? For some reason, many people that see art as a leisure feature need to have a peace of mind and not this horrible news that we have all the time with this happened and this happened. I think that when the economic crisis started in 2008, we all thought that this will help the values kind of come back, the real values, the non-commercial values come back. But actually it didn't happen from what I see. Now we have another crisis that is felt in the world. Maybe this will make the values come back. For the moment, this is what's missing, some kind of peace so that more people become audiences.
Jennifer, what's your view?
Sure. We work a lot with museums and cultural institutions here in the U.S. So I think from our perspective, we need more diversity in terms of the institutions abroad that people are partnering with. A lot of museums will partner with institutions in Western Europe because they share a common language, because they share a common history sometimes. But I think in order to really sort of grow the field of artistic exchange, we need to look elsewhere for these partnerships. So I think the One Belt, One Road initiative is really great because it means the potential for more artistic exchanges with China. And these can be everything from sharing exhibitions to scholarly exchanges to building educational programming to educate audiences. So I think that's something that's really needed in the field of exchange right now, particularly on sort of the museum and exhibition side of things.
I want to peel down a little deeper in the issue of economic vitality and wealth and poverty. It strikes me as culture is something that is inside literally every life form, regardless of circumstance. And maybe what you're thinking about the role of management in peeling that back, and maybe what are some tools that we can use to connect with people who may be in a life struggle, but nonetheless have a cultural value and something to contribute. What what's the encouragement? How do you teach managers to tackle that in the face of maybe disappointing economic reality?
Yeah. I always started to.
Oh, sure.
Would you like to start now?
I think, first of all, recognizing that culture is, it is a monolith, but it involves so many different things. It's not only sort of museum exhibitions and performing arts, but it's also language, it's food, it's sports, it's a way of life. So I think being able to tap into sort of those maybe not as followed channels of culture, that might be a place that we can get to those people who maybe can't afford to go to the ballet or can't do what have you. So I think maybe kind of unpacking culture a little bit and seeing if there's areas for engagement there. Popular culture, TV, movies, that's something that a lot of people do have access to in sort of this ever-connected world, so that might be an interesting place to sort of tap into. I know just a few weeks ago, the New York City Ballet had a special on PBS, so that brought something like the ballet to the homes of millions of Americans so they could enjoy that. So I think that might be one area for exploration.
We do have in Vienna, in Austria, an organization that is called Hunger für Kunst und Kultur, which means hunger for arts and culture. And this it develops audiences among the people who have money, the poorest people. It's not just that they get a free ticket for something, but it really develops this audience, kind of trying to prove to this audience that if you visit an exhibition or a concert, this might give you some courage or inspiration for putting your life on rails again or something like this, and it functions quite well. I think, and this is also going to be part of my lecturing now in the US, that creating some social engagement through culture is something that almost every project can adapt. We cannot leave this anymore just to social projects, but the art and culture have to lose a bit of this elitarian ivory tower image, because not only poor people are afraid to visit an exhibition, also other people that have the money prefer to see sports, as you said, or something. And so kind of forcing them to this happy moment somehow.
I spent part of my career working in inner cities in America, and what I found is that wealthy people are afraid of poor people. They're afraid to go into the settings of poverty, and of course when you are there you discover cultural depth and cultural dynamics. And I found food to be the glue. Covered dish, everybody brings something to share.
But also conversations on topics that are archaic, like Shakespearean topics.
Oh, absolutely.
Love, or who hasn't been disappointed by love at some point? Love doesn't make a difference between the social layers.
We're in the middle of King Lear right now.
Okay.
I think it's also important to look at sort of partnerships. We have academics and universities that have access to a lot of great resources, but then we also have a lot of sort of non-profit and grassroots level organizations that are sort of in the thick of things. So I think there's a really good space for those two to collaborate a little bit more and find new ways of bringing culture and sort of exchanging that culture, because like you said, there's sort of space for both.
So at this moment the world is shrinking. We are able to access people so much easier than in the past. At the same time, I think we are mindful of the geopolitical tensions, economic tensions, the various barriers that exist that we as individuals struggle against in some cases. I'm minded of back in the Middle Ages when one of artists' jobs was to remind the ruling class of their responsibilities. What do you two want to say to China, which is becoming increasingly effective, increasingly impactful, increasingly invested in global exchange? What's your advice to the nation, to the artist, to the educator?
To the European educator or
to the Chinese?
To the Chinese educator.
And to those of us who are engaged with China.
I would say curiosity and reciprocity. If if you ask me like this. So curiosity is something that these cultures are different, or maybe they aren't. It's actually not known how different it is. Curiosity is the basic to know each other. I think that we shouldn't just mail each other, and I think we should try to immerse into the other culture in order to see what's common, what's different, what can we keep out of the differences, what can we use as a basis from the commonalities, and reciprocity. It has to be clear that each nation in this world, each culture, has certain strengths that can become part of the individual skills package of each cultural manager or artist. Yeah.
That's very wise, I think. What's your view, Jennifer?
I think, from my perspective, persistence is really important. I think we need to be mindful that collaborations and partnerships aren't going to happen overnight. It takes time to build trust and build understanding and sort of understand the differences, but also learn to celebrate the similarities between cultures. And I think we need to be looking not only what we can be doing today, but also how that will impact the next few years, whether that's 10, 20, 50 years out. So I think it comes back to starting to build those networks. If you study abroad, if you travel abroad, if you intern abroad, stay in touch, whether it's Facebook or email or some other social media. I think we have so many great tools at our disposal to keep those connections going. And I think that's really going to be the key to unlocking a world of collaborations and partnerships and funding down the line.
Yeah. The 5 themes of policy that China is advancing. Let's just reflect a moment as it relates to arts management. Theme 1 is creativity. What's your view of creativity?
My goodness, what a question.
And what do we mean when we say creativity?
Yeah. This is a question that we probably could talk about half a century.
Right.
Yeah, and it has been talked about. Now that you ask me at this time of the season and the day, creativity probably means to have the courage to wake up and do something new with your day that you didn't do every other day of the week. I guess this is a possible definition.
I completely agree. I also think creativity not in sort of artistic work and what you're creating, but also creativity in finding new avenues to show that work, finding new partners to work on that work with. I think creativity can encapsulate a lot of different parts and facets of cultural exchange.
How do we encourage managers to be comfortable with what then is the unknown? What's your technique? What do you say to your students? Go forth and
you cannot encourage everybody. So you have different characters in a group, yeah, and you have some characters that really would like that are like Christopher Columbus, that are explorers and they see everything as an adventure. And there are some others who have more or less the same attitude towards life, like a baker man, and who wants to do his bread every day. But also a baker's man does innovations in their job, So you cannot push people all in the same direction, because we also can't have just millions of artists, millions of Van Goghs. There's one Van Gogh. And art is not a therapy, or I don't see it as something that has to do with therapy for frustration of everybody. And I think Balzac was it that said it, that and as a writer, it's kind of, for me, relevant. He said, the moment when the end of analphabetism was the end of literature. Because, once everybody can write, this loses a certain level. So I don't think that we have to be too leveling in this, that everybody have to be innovative. We have to provide the tools for those who want to go for the adventure, so that they don't lose their head there.
Yeah, what about vision? Where does vision come from? What's the role of vision?
Yeah, I think vision can kind of come from many different areas. A lot of times in museums and cultural institutions, it is top down. It's from the board of directors, it's from the leader of the institution. But I also think there's a growing movement in communities to have a voice and say, well, this is what we want to see. we want to learn more about China, we want to learn more about Africa or a certain area or certain people. So I think, it's all about exchanges. It's two ways. It's, listening and talking. So I see that as really important. And I also think having a space for, exchange facilitators and arts managers and even policy people to come together and say, like, this is what we've found from our field. Like, is this useful to you? What do you find useful?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, there's some innovations that happen in different areas of the same field or in different fields that we really can learn from, and it can help us in our efforts to be more global in terms of our scope.
I think that your vision has not to do with us educating somebody and having a vision, but us educating ourselves and being authentic and sharing how far we have come on our way. And then some people will get inspired by this and others not. But, like sharing authentically what we have experienced. This is why I think that these arts management programs should be taught by people who are also involved in projects, not just academic work.
I have a sort of a personal view of vision, which is if you can open your eyes and see it, it's already history. And so if you want to see the future, you have to see it with your eyes closed.
That's true.
Otherwise, it's always history. Or some form of memory.
It's not a vision anymore.
No, it's memory already. It's memory.
Interesting.
But I think it takes, like you both have said, it takes a certain kind of attitude, a certain courage. And I agree with you, not everybody has to close their eyes and imagine everything. Sometimes I was looking the other day for really good bread, and I couldn't find any. Well, I think when we talk about cultural exchange, my generation certainly thinks of cultural heritage. But I have witnessed over the years that oftentimes our nomads aren't really interested in cultural heritage. They're interested in the new. So talk about cultural heritage. What's the importance of advancing the artifact, the shared memory, the great work? Is that central or is it tandem, or what's its role?
I think in terms of sort of physically protecting cultural heritage, that's something we've seen a lot of in the past 5-10 years with some of the political climate throughout the world. So I think protecting that cultural heritage is going to be so important in the years to come. I also think it's important for institutions and exchange facilitators to remember that it's all about a balance. The old and the new can exist together, and I think it's important to show both perspectives. Because we all, art and culture is all about taste. It's what we like and what we like when we see something. So I don't think you can force one particular era or style on someone. I think you have to give them the options and allow them to, find what they love and, follow that passion.
Well, and I think what I'm seeing in China, where I've been afforded opportunities to visit and to work, there really is a risk of losing a lot of cultural attitudes towards Chinese opera, Chinese dance, Chinese movement, calligraphy, the great art traditions on behalf of modernity, the cultural industries. Disney. Disney. Well, let's talk about Disney.
But I just want to come back to your, because this question with the cultural heritage, I was born in Sofia, but I grew up in Vienna. And in Vienna, cultural heritage is just everything. In the first district, you're not supposed to build buildings that are above the tower of the St. Stephen's Cathedral. So it kind of limits it because it's been built a while ago. And I grew up with just rebelling against this cultural heritage because it doesn't give leave space for the new things. But the more I came back working with Bulgaria as my country, where things have been destroyed more and more, I understood that there is something about cultural heritage that you cannot replace with new things. Some kind of values that you love because they were of your parents and grandparents, or if you are in Mexico and you see the pyramid, it's not your culture, but you kind of feel somebody put so much effort into it. So I think that the cultural heritage shouldn't be just all reigning and domaining and not giving any space to the new things.
Right.
But it should be preserved maybe equally with the new, so that some values are traditioned. We people need roots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think advancements in technology have really helped in terms of preserving the old. You know, you can go online and find text and Bibles from hundreds of years ago. And I think that will be something sort of down the line that's really helpful in preserving the heritages of sort of nations from around the world and peoples.
But it's different when you touch it and when you see it.
That's true.
Oh, sure.
Because with technology it might be that everything is getting destroyed, but we have it online or so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's follow technology. So
Yeah.
new things, new inventions, new platforms, and it's a gigantic industry, right?
Yeah.
The movie industry, the cell phone industry, and it certainly represents a vision for the new generation.
Yeah.
What's the arts manager's role there? Or do we leave it up to the business people to deal with this? Or should we be dealing with it?
I think we should take things back to the human contact more. Yeah. No, I don't know if I'm understanding your question well, but I think that technology is wonderful, but it also takes a lot of time. So until I have answered all my emails or looked up who wrote me what on Facebook, I could have met somebody, and
It's so
known.
true.
It kind of replaces the human contact that cannot be replaced. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's age or something that I come back to this. I've been an aficionado for the social media. Now more and more I prefer some contact on a human base because it's different when you look into people's eyes.
As educators, do you hesitate to encourage young people to pursue arts management careers? You think it's robust no matter what?
I think that it allows for a very varied life and personality, because you have to be the shepherd, you have to be also the circus director, and you can live nowadays a person, or the people that I know, they don't follow just one career. I mean, in culture, in medicine it's different, and so. But they have many things. There's a singer, this and this and this, and I think this wish not to ignore or neglect one of the careers and get frustrated over it is possible in cultural management.
I agree.
That's what
My
I
experience
think.
exactly.
Yeah.
When parents say to me, "What's the backup plan?" I always say, "You don't really want one.
Right.
No.
You want to devote yourself
Yeah.
with complete focus." However, I say every waiter, every waitress in Switzerland speaks 3 languages. So my real question is not what's your backup plan, what's your second language?
Yeah.
And that second language in my case was management. And I found that the two worlds just kept very much like you described.
Yeah.
For a while this and then for a while that. And it kept coming together. Well, let's transition to community. That's the 4th policy area, arts in the community. You know, one of our premier, I think, arts management theorists is Doug Borwick here in the United States, and he wrote a wonderful book about almost 10 years ago now called Build Community, Not Audiences. Is that part of your life, part of your career also, and how does it manifest itself?
I think certainly at International Arts and Artists, we have several different programs. The exchanges are just one side of what we do. But for us, we are also really focused here locally on the DC community. We have a public art space that we show local and international arts and artists. And for us, it's it is building a little bit audience. I think that's always going to be part of what we do. But I think for us, it's really engaging with these audiences and being able to have conversations about, the art or speakers or something that we have on display. And I think, again, it kind of always comes back to sort of digital tools for me. I think, having all these wonderful tools to get information out there is really helpful. Facebook Live, you can have a talk with a curator and hundreds of people from around the country and around the world can see it. So I think we really need to tap into those resources and find out the best way to harness the potential of them, because I think we're still not using it to the best extent.
Well, it's a beautiful final transition because that's exactly what we're going to do
excellent.
today.
Okay.
But let me leave us with one last bit of brainstorming. So the Confucius Institute have university partners literally all over the globe. I don't think there's any country that doesn't have one. How, and this is brainstorming, I didn't ask you before, but how can we capture this incredible resource, do you think? And maybe just share some imaginary things that we might do. We have them in Cuba, we have them in Bulgaria, we have them in Vienna, we have them everywhere. So it's a resource that's emerged in the last 10 years.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I've been thinking about this now the last hour that we are sitting here, that I would like to, for example, in my module of the global conversation, I would like to involve maybe a unit with the Confucius Center or something. To people will be so grateful to have this opportunity to enter this door.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has to do what they can. Yeah.
Sure.
So, and I myself would be curious because I don't consider knowing enough about the program and so on.
Well, it's been quiet. It's been an intrinsic movement,
Yeah.
but it's taken root and it's evolving as a very fluent, powerful movement of really quite engaged cultural and academic pursuit. So, what's your view?
Sure.
How can you capture us?
Right. Well, I think universities really are sources of excellence and innovation in their communities. So I really see the institutes being located in universities as like a really good tool and collaborative for museums or cultural organizations who want to do a project or do something with China and don't really know where to start. Maybe they don't speak the
Right.
language, they don't know what arts management is like there.
Whom to trust.
Exactly. Like, where do you even
As a
start?
partner,
You know,
yeah.
who do you Google if you want to do a partnership? So I see the institutes really as a great place for someone in that community to turn and say, "I'd like to do this project. Where do I go from here?" And being able to sort of build on that knowledge that the institutes have. And also, sort of on the flip side, if the university or the institute wants to do something in that local community, the arts organization or the institution can be a really great tool and resource for them as well. So again, it comes back to that two-way exchange. It's all about reciprocity.
Well, both of you have been tremendous ambassadors, and we've certainly enjoyed this conversation and this wonderful time together. We'd like to say welcome to our audiences around the globe to Cultural Conversations from the Confucius Institute USA Center.